with my wife and do it myself, really.
You mentioned Europe in there. I mean, you're pretty popular in Europe.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah.
And yet, you know, it's very difficult for a non-English speaking person to perhaps appreciate the subtleties in the lyrics. I mean, why do you think that is, that Europe's cottoned on to the Smiths when they're sort of a very English band?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's especially puzzling because of the importance of the lyrics, and because, you know, they literally are much more important than the average rock lyric. And I think the language, the actual language barrier is transcended by our appeal, our image, and the principles that the group sort of own, you know, that we stand behind. I mean, I know what you're saying, that, for instance, you know, there's tons of French kids that absolutely adore the Smiths who can't speak a word of English. I still think they know what we're about. I really do. I mean, obviously, you know, if they're Smiths fans, then they find out what the lyrics mean. But as far as initial attraction, we don't. To a European kid, we look quite different, and we are quite different. Our sort of our philosophies are pretty different to the norm in rock and roll. But we still do have a sort of well, we do have a rock and roll appeal in Europe that certainly the French and the Italians and the Germans find really appealing. I mean, those countries are always massive. They're always going to be there's always going to be a massive market for American and English rock and roll. There's people like Johnny Holiday, you know, in France, who's still making like disco records now, high energy records. His whole career has just been France, and he's been massive there, and it's because he's got a massive spirit of rock and roll. They love all that, the Europeans, which is why I like it. It's my kind of thing. You know, the people like Johnny Thunders and the Dolls and the Stones and Iggy and all these sort of veterans of rock and roll they really, really like. And I think that they can see some of that in us, but still there's a completely new angle. And to give all credit to Morrissey, really, that's Morrissey's side of things. I mean, he really does bring in the new totally un-rock and roll angle to the rock and roll group.
You've mentioned the words like doctrine and philosophy a couple of times. Is there like a Smiths manifesto?
Our doctrine is that all the naff and the hideous things that have happened as a consequence of rock and roll and all the things that are supposed to be accepted within this music business, we don't want to involve that in the group at all, you know. Limos are okay, I suppose, now and again. Long hair, drugs, baggy trousers, drum solos, concept LPs, the normal things that are just current rock and roll that people take for granted, that are hideous. Instrumental mixes on B-sides of singles, ridiculous tours, massive crappy venues, bad merchandising to the audience, all these kind of really horrible old stale things that mean nothing to young people in the 80s, in any country, you know, in East or West or anything, you know. No one really gives a shit about leather trousers anymore, except, you know, people who are trying to, you know, people who are hung up on Velvet Underground LPs and stuff. That's all very boring, but, you know, it's sort of come to a head over the last few years in this country with groups sort of just playing out this kind of rock and roll facade. And, I mean, we're completely different, you know, completely different.
How were you affected by punk?
Oh, unfortunately, I was sort of born a little bit too late, because it happened at the time when I was really starting to take my playing seriously. And just as I was learning how to play all these intricate patterns and chords and everything, the norm, you know, all these kids came out after playing trash. And so initially I missed the point and the beauty of it, really, because I was personally just getting into actually being able to play, and the whole idea was not being able to play. But, you know, after a year or so, I found things that really, really interested me in the punk movement. I mean, there was a lot of good things out of it, most notably Patti Smith, and Stooges, groups like that. I mean, I was one of those people who didn't get into the Stooges until punk. You know, I don't claim to have liked the Stooges in 1973, mainly because I was only 10, you know.
The Smiths are very successful here in the UK. With this next album, are you consciously sort of aiming for like a wider success, say in America or anything like that?
Not consciously, no, not with this album, because we wanted to do that with the first LP. We consciously did it from the start. We wanted to be worldwidely big, and we've always tried to do what it appears we're doing now. That's trying to make a bigger chart impression in America, and in Australia, and in Japan, and places that we've been too busy to visit and too busy to work on.
What do you like about America?
I like the music, and I like the people. I like the history. Short as many people think it is. I think America's really a fascinating place. And I think the bad negative things about it, which everybody can get to see when they go, are equally as fascinating. And I like it because it's much less self-conscious, and even though obviously politically it's in a mess, and probably even a mess on a bigger scale than most other countries, put it that way. But at least I think this positive kind of spirit of just musicians in America is something that's really attractive, and something that's missing in a hideous way from this country. And I mean, I'm not talking about, obviously, Reaganomics or the kind of ridiculous propaganda that's, the born in the USA kind of conservatism. I'm not talking about it in a political sense. Well, obviously, I think that stinks, but it's much more inspiring than living in this country at the moment, anyway.
How important do you think the Smiths' image is? Is it important to you?
Oh, yeah. Not in the sense of, the way we have our haircut or the clothes we wear. Not image in that sense, just again, our image, I think, encompasses that whole kind of manifesto thing and doctrine, and I think our image is crucially important. You just take a look at the new LP. I mean, I think the World Won't Listen's a really, really good, strong LP sleeve. I think it's one of the strongest for a long time, as was the Elvis Presley Shoplifter sleeve. But the World Won't Listen sleeve, I think, is really, really good, because our audience, people who want to buy the record, they buy it, and the sleeve is trying to sort of depict them, really. I mean, not that we regard all our audiences all wearing leather jackets and having either bouffants or quiffs or anything. It's much more important than that. It's just we do try and identify ourselves to our audience as young, living in the 80s. I mean, we are young, and we do live very much in the 80s. That's why we don't want to be painted as just a rock and roll band with all the traditions of the other rock and roll groups, because there's something that special and extra that you need in the 80s, that audience require from the group. I wouldn't want to go out, if I wasn't in a group, I wouldn't want to go out and see a group and just see them come on and do the old leather pants strip or the light strip and the backdrop and the usual kind of palaver. I mean, our image is that we try to portray that we live in the real world.
So once the album's finished, what's the plan for the rest of 1987?
People obviously want us to say we're going to tour, even the labels and stuff. But we're not going to be touring England, though. We're not going to be touring Australia. I mean, maybe we'll just do some European gigs, and maybe we'll do some American gigs. But we'll only have time to do that, and that alone, if we want to stick to what we really want to do, and that's make some more records this year.
So, are you still enjoying yourself as much as when you first started?
Oh yeah, I am. I'm enjoying it more so now. The last sort of few months, I've been enjoying it more so than I have for ages. Yeah. Yeah, I really am enjoying it. It's great, because we're doing what has always been the most enjoyable. Right now, you caught me at a good time, because we're doing it. Has always been the most enjoyable thing for us to do. When we're making an LP, it's great, and it's brilliant when we're in this position. We're making an LP, because we always do feel exactly the same way. So, to hell with whether we've got a single on this LP. I mean, we've never been the sort of group who, when we put down the tracks for the LP, go, where's the single? The single's either there, and if it isn't there, then so what, And we're on a really kind of anarchistic high about this record. We're trying to make it as uncommercial and as unaccessible as is possible within the Smiths. I mean, you know, we're not SPK, but we're trying to not sort of be safe. You know, I don't think we'll ever be safe.